Okay, so this is the first video. We are going to look at a one sample z-test, and we are going to use some code in R that can be downloaded separately to do this. We're going to use our Markdown so that we can also create a write-up that can be easily shared with others using HTML code. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly walk through that code and show how it works and show the output and how it can be read. So here is an R Markdown file. And what you'll notice here is that as with all Markdown files, there's a title and author, date, or whatever. And then there's some simple instructions about what different features you need. So for all of these, you want to make sure that you have the data and that's associated with it, and that you have the packages that will end up being used. None of the code here will install any packages. Okay. In this first setup, starting here at line 10, is something that you'll want to change so that you can put your own directory into line 13. So you want to start by changing this to wherever you've downloaded your files and saved this here. And the only thing that we'll be using today is tidyverse. So you want to make sure that you have tidyverse installed as well. So here's the background. What we're going to try to do here is determine if a sample of plane tickets that we have collected, it differs from the population flying from Charlotte to Flagstaff. And we're going to say, all right, well, we know that the average plane ticket in the population of all the plane tickets costs $452, and that the standard deviation is 98. So we're going to use a z-test to determine if the sample comes from a different population than the one that we've described here. Okay, so in order to do this, some of the first things we need to do are bring in the data. So line 29 brings in the data. And remember, you can hit Control Enter, Command Enter to just run a single line. The next thing that we need to do is we need to determine what the ticket cost is. Now we know if we were to look at this variable data, we know that there are 250 observations of one variable. So it's just a big long line of numbers that are ticket costs. Now, since we've read this in, and it has a header saying ticket costs, we just need to tell R to calculate the average of that particular column. So we're going to do this here by saying, what is the average of the ticket cost inside the data frame called data? And then we'll do the same thing on line 33 for the sample standard deviation. We're just going to save those as values by calling them something. I hear sample mean and sample standard deviation. The next thing that we need to do, because we're going to calculate, we don't have a function for this, we need to actually do some calculations here, is we need to know what the population mean are and the population standard deviation, and we need to save those as variables, which we'll do in line 32 and 33. And here we're simply, or excuse me, in line 37 and 38. And we're just going to type those in and save it. Next thing we need to know is the sample size. So here we're just going to say, okay, well, tell me R how long is this list of numbers? Okay, so length, the command length says count the number of things in this particular list or data frame or whatever it is. And let me just make sure that I'm running these. Next thing we'll do is we'll calculate the standard error of the mean. We know the formula for the standard error of the mean is the population standard deviation divided by the square root of the number of observations. So we're just going to type this in here and allow R to calculate that for us. We've already calculated these variables earlier. Population standard deviation comes from right here. And the number of observations, N, it goes into there. And so we're just telling R look for those values. So let's do that, boom. Now, in order to calculate a Z statistic, we need to take the sample mean divided by the population, or subtracted from the population mean, and then divided by the standard error of the mean. And since we've named our variables that, we can just say our Z obtained value is the sample mean minus the population mean divided by the standard error of the mean, and boom, we will get something. The next thing we need to do is we need to compare whether that Z obtained value that we've gotten is bigger or smaller than the Z critical value. Now we've talked about, at least if you've been in my class, how we can just tell what that critical value is. Here it is negative 1.96 and 1.96. So we're just going to say, hey, R, I really want you to remember the critical value as both this value and this value. That'll allow us to do a two-tailed test here. We could also, just use one there and not use that C for combined. Next, what we'll do is we'll say, okay, well, I can write a little bit of code that compares our critical value and our obtained value. So that's what I've done here, starting in line 55. And what this says is if the Z obtained value is less than the first value of the Z critical, right here, or, that little line means or, if it's greater than the second value, right here, then tell me my results are significant. Otherwise, if else, otherwise, tell me that our results failed to reach significance. Okay, so we're just telling R to tell us the information that we want in a nice, understandable way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run this chunk of code by clicking this button right here. And what we'll see is that it tells us, yes, our results are significant. Okay, so now we know that we should reject the null hypothesis. We should accept the alternative hypothesis that our sample does differ from the population. And what we'll do here is we'll go ahead and write these up in APA style. So here I've given you an example of APA style formatting. Some things you should note is that asterisk something asterisk changes this into italics. And so we've also done that in some other places to make sure that we are in APA formatting, right? I might have missed a couple of them. And the other thing I want you to notice is that I've asked R to report out values in lines using this kind of code right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, here's a tick mark. A tick mark, then write the letter R, and then we're going to put some code in there and then do another tick mark. So this corresponds to that. And what you'll notice is I've said, okay, tell me what the Z-score was, the Z obtained score. But when you do that, round the Z obtained score that I've already calculated up here to 2 decimal places because that's APA style. And I've done this for all of the other ones as well. So we're just going to tell R, hey, look, you already know what these values are. Just spit them out to me in this kind of a format. And we don't need a table or a figure here because the Z-test write-up has already given us the means, the standard deviations, the p-values, etc. So let's see what this looks like. So I'm going to hit Control-Shift-K to knit this document. And we're going to see what the HTML output looks like and make sure that it looks the way that we think that it should. So here we go. I have suppressed the code except for the results are significant. And here in our written example, we can notice that, you know, the Z is italicized. We have 2 decimal places here and here and here. Not in the last one, right? So now all of our formatting is correct. And again, we don't need a figure or table for this test because we're simply writing them out. Okay, so now you can use this to go back and just plug in your own data if you need to use a Z-test or need to do a Z-test. And what that will allow you to do is simply have this written results and it spit it right out for you. The last thing I'll say is that one other thing we can do is we can now copy this and maybe we want to put it in a Word document to write up for class. And if we hit paste, we'll notice that our formatting remains largely, if not exactly, the same. Just zoom out a little bit here. Okay. So now we have a nice place where we can start editing and adjusting if we need to, or copying and pasting into other places, as well as being able to spit this code out and have it saved to, or somebody open it who doesn't have R. So that's the end of the one sample Z-test. And remember that you can go back and use these. And my last suggestion is just to look at the formatting of the files, the input files, because if those aren't in the right format, sometimes you'll have some problems with getting the code to work correctly. So thanks for watching and hope this is helpful.